Remodelers and custom builders, welcome back to the growth framework. We are walking through in detail our entire proven framework for scaling and growing remodeling and custom home building businesses. So just to orient you a little bit, we are in the first pillar of attract, which is all about how to pull in more of your ideal clients and get them to your website. We're talking about the marketing bullseye in attract. So we've already talked about the center, which is the website, and that is the foundation for all your marketing efforts. In the last video, we talked about the first ring, which is all about owning your digital real estate and owned traffic. And now we're going to talk about rented traffic. So let's dive in, and we're going to start with, at the center here, we're going to put our landing page. And so anytime that we are going to pay directly for traffic, again, just as a reminder, in the marketing bullseye here, when we talked about owned traffic, that was SEO, AI, showing up, and when people do searches and they click on your result, you don't pay for that click. Rented traffic, we're saying, yes, we're actually going out to these different marketplaces and we're going to buy traffic and send it to our site. And so every time someone clicks on an ad, then you pay. So we want to make sure that we have positioned our overall strategy with rented traffic in a way that we can push that traffic down into the center of the bullseye. And one of those ways that we do that is we actually want out of our landing page to capture an email and an email address. And that is like the foundation for capturing a lead, as we got some contact info. If you remember, your email list is part of your owned digital real estate and your owned assets, and that's part of that first ring. So we're driving this paid traffic and trying to convert as much of it into owned traffic, because then you can stay in touch with these people without having to pay for those clicks again. So let's pay to get them here once and convert as many as we can. So that's something that you really want to keep in mind as you start driving traffic to your website. Okay, so this, just as a reminder, this is going to be a landing page, not just your home page or a generic page. We want to drive traffic to a targeted page that is built to convert. So we're going to start with Google, and we're going to break down two channels today. So we're going to start with Google, and then we'll work our way over to Meta. Those are typically the two primary channels that most remodelers and custom builders are going to be using to drive traffic. Okay, so let's start with Google, and we're going to get into two things here. We're going to talk about targeting, and we're going to talk about creative. And we're going to do this for both channels. Okay, so on Google, when we go to set up our campaign, we need to think about, okay, who do we want seeing our ads and what clicks do we actually want to pay for? And so the targeting for this is typically you're going to look at zip codes and you're going to look at keywords. So let's say you are located in Denver, Colorado. You probably don't service the entire metro area. If you do, that's fine. But most likely, you have a few pockets that are your top zip codes, your top neighborhoods. And that's where you want to do more work. That's where you get your best projects, maybe your highest margin projects. And again, these things are filters for strategy. Already, you might say, well, I do target all of Denver. That's fine. When we're starting to pay for traffic, we want to focus in and say, but even though you serve all of Denver, where are those best projects coming from? What are the neighborhoods that I would, man, if I could just do 80% of my work in these 3 neighborhoods, I would love that. Cool, that's where we're going to start. You can always expand later if you want to burn some more money. All right, next we're going to go to keywords. Once we've picked our locations, we say, hey, let's start with these handful of zip codes. Now let's layer on keywords. We want to focus on high intent keywords. So this is not the time to be targeting things like design ideas. This is the time to target things like luxury kitchen remodel in Denver, or home addition in Cherry Creek, or design build remodeler in Aurora, whatever those specific areas are. And then again, those keywords are going to be high intent, meaning if somebody went and typed that in, Does it seem like they're actively starting their search to find a company that they want to hire? Design ideas, great. Let's maybe go write a blog post on that if we want to get some traffic. We don't want to be paying for all of those clicks because that's just going to rack us up a bunch of clicks, and a very, very, very small percentage of those people might actually be ready for a sales conversation. What we're trying to do here is take people that are in these areas and they're typing in very specific keywords, and we want to drive them right to our landing page. So that's some basic targeting. And then we need to move to the creative. Okay, so what are we doing? We're saying, okay, when somebody types in, luxury kitchen remodel in Denver, what actually happens? What actually happens is they're showing up in Google search. And by they, I mean you, because you're running this ad and you're showing up. And so your website is going to show up, but what that looks like is in a Google search. And so it's that listing page that we're all familiar with. You do a Google search and you see the blue links, you see the map. At the very top are ads. And so that is what's going to show up. And so you'll notice for Google, the creative, it's text. We're going to talk about creative over here, which is different on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. But here it's text. And so we're just going to use text-based creative. And a lot of remodelers will just use the keyword that they're targeting. So let's do a quick example here. So let's say our keyword phrase that we're targeting is luxury remodeler in Cherry Creek, which is one of the more higher end neighborhoods in the Denver area. So if we were writing a text-based ad for this, what's going to show up here? Then we might say something like award-winning remodeling service. So if somebody's looking for a remodeler and they see this headline, that captures my eye. It's got this award-winning, but it's also describing what I'm offering. And so here we have a tendency to just use generic words like remodeling service, or we might even match this and say luxury remodeler in Cherry Creek. Depending on the keyword, that might be an okay strategy. But in this case, we can add kind of a little bit of punch to it. And what we're trying to do is, hey, we've paid to show up at the top of Google. We want to catch somebody's eye and get them to click. And it's not just about getting the clicks, because we want the clicks from the right people, which is why we targeted luxury remodeler in Cherry Creek, because we're saying, hey, if somebody's typing in luxury remodeler versus just remodeler, they're thinking high end. And if that's who we're trying to attract, then this is a good high intent keyword. We got award winning, which matches luxury, and then we're going to take them over to our landing page. So these work in concert and they work in tandem, and it all starts with your original strategy of who are you trying to attract, and then that gets baked into your targeting, the zip codes. Hey, I want to work in these high-end neighborhoods. Cool. And then it also gets baked into the keywords using phrases that your target audience would be looking for, like luxury. And then in our creative, which again on Google is fairly basic compared to over here, text-based, so we're going to use something that matches that, like award-winning or top firm or language that's going to mirror what we're trying to attract. Then someone's actually going to click on it. And now you've paid, and we bring them over to our landing page. So we're going to talk about some landing page best practices, but before we do that, we're going to shift over to Meta. All right, so that's Google. That's one way that you can rent traffic and pay for clicks and drive them to your website. Okay, let's move to Meta. So this is Facebook and Instagram, and you will create these ads through the Facebook Ads Manager, and they'll get pushed out to Instagram if that's where you're trying to target. So here, the targeting is similar in the sense that we're going to do location, our zip codes, and so we're still going to target that way. We can use some demographic information here, and so typically this is going to be like an age range, and then you can use a number of other factors here. So you can typically pick age. Sometimes you can get into income. Sometimes you can get into a few other things. However, more and more, this ad platform is becoming and shifting into a spot where the creative ends up being a little bit more of your targeting as well, and we'll get to that in a second. But here you can select some different demographic information. And again, zip code is going to be a good one here. You can add on interest level. But again, I'm finding that aside from zip code and location, a little bit more targeting through the creative is where the platforms are shifting. Again, these platforms are always changing, and so what we want to look at is the overall overarching strategy for what we're trying to accomplish here. Before I get to the creative, something to keep in mind is Google is all about intent, right? And so when we went here, we're targeting a keyword where somebody has a specific intent, they have an objective, they have a mission, they're going to Google for a reason, they're typing in and trying to find a company, a service, a problem to be solved. I need my kitchen remodeled, so I'm looking for an answer. And so when they type things in, they have a strong buying intent. So that's what we talk about over here when we're talking about intent. Here, this is more, of a stop the scroll. We're interrupting somebody over here. They didn't necessarily go to Instagram and start scrolling and looking for a remodeling company. They went to Instagram to just scroll and burn time, see what their friends and family are doing, follow their influencers, all of that kind of stuff. And so we have to recognize, okay, our ads are being shown in two different environments. It makes sense that we would have a different strategy. And, over here, somebody isn't seeking out that remodeling company. They're on a different mission. And so this has to be compelling in a different way. We can still find and capture those people that may be in the active research process, but obviously they're not seeking out that solution over here. And so that is something that we need to keep in mind. Now, over here on the creative side, we want to, again, stop the scroll. And so the first objective is that somebody's just cruising and we need to have something that catches their eye. But it's not just something that catches your eye. You've probably seen a lot of those, you'll be watching the first part of a video clip and it's something crazy is happening. And then something flies into the screen and then it just hits into some guy talking about whatever service. And you're going, this is this random video clip now that just went into this service. They're just using that as like a hook. But again, what we want to do is actually hook the right people. And so that hook is probably going to catch most people because there's something wild that's happening, something crazy. Yeah, where is this going? And then boom, it cuts to a guy talking about, hey, come in and clean your teeth, or it's for an auto shop or whatever. And you go, oh, I don't need that, and then you're gone. But you've actually told the algorithm that you want to watch some of this. And so I think we need to stop the scroll with something that's actually aligned with what you're selling. And so we're seeing, the creative strategy will always change, but we're seeing, a basic structure is you basically want to call out who you're serving. And so, hey, if you're serving, you might call out, Cherry Creek homeowners. Is something that, hey, if I'm over here in Cherry Creek, I'm trying to target Cherry Creek. Sure, I've selected that as my zip code, but I also want to confirm, hey, Cherry Creek homeowner. So I might include something like that in my creative. And again, that's helping me target better. So even if my targeting is a little bit broad, I can actually use my creative to focus in on that person. If I'm sitting there in the Cherry Creek neighborhood and I see this, I'm immediately, my attention is kind of peaked. I'm going, wow, that's hyper specific. And then you might have, a sub headline, like outdated kitchen. Spelling is not going well over here. Outdated kitchen is what that says. But now I've basically zoomed in my focus on a neighborhood and I've zoomed in my focus on a problem. And so if somebody sees this and they're in research mode for their remodel, hey, now I'm intrigued. I've caught the right person at the right time. I've stopped the scroll and now they're going to click. And again, right here, the goal is to get them to click and come over to a landing page. So targeting over here, intent-based. Targeting over here, mostly, location with a little bit of demographic. Creative over here is just text. Creative over here, this could be anything. It could be a static image, it could be photos, it could be videos. But again, we want to try to do some level of targeting inside of our creative and in our headline and description and all that, so that we can make sure that we're really zooming in on the right person and the right problem, so that when they click over, we have a higher chance of converting them. Because again, you could get a lot of clicks and views on your ad by doing some crazy wild stuff and doing some unique hooks, But if it's not relevant to your target audience and it's not drawing them in, you're just going to end up spending a lot of money that you don't want to. Okay, let's talk about our landing page. So once we get them to our landing page, the whole goal is to continue to filter in the right people and filter out the wrong people. And so we're going to do that by basically adding a high level of what we'll say congruency from our ads to the page. So if we have, luxury remodeler in Cherry Creek, right here, we might use words like luxury remodeling services, and that might be in our headline. We also want to say, something like who we serve. So we might say serving, and then you would put the areas and the specific cities, locations, neighborhoods that you serve. So now we've got what we are, who we serve, where we serve, and then we want to use the rest of the page to basically build trust, build proof, build credibility, and then we also want to convert. And so we are going to do a deep dive on convert, but the standard practice is for this page, we want to on-ramp somebody to sales. And so we typically talk about having 2 forms of conversion, 2 doors of conversion on every page. And so on here, we're going to have either a contact form or a meeting scheduler. And so we want to have one of these options. So as people come in, we can say, hey, you can fill out some information. We're going to capture that. That way we can follow up with you. If you have and utilize a meeting scheduler, somebody can just pick a time and you can basically start booking discovery calls right onto your calendar to see if they're a good fit. So the other components that we want to have here, are going to be trust and proof. And so that's going to be, photos, process, testimonials, and reviews, and then budget ranges. And so you're going to be able to fill up your page with trust and proof. The headline is hopefully doing a quick filter for any traffic that came in that we maybe wanted to filter out. Oh, actually, I'm not in that area. Cool. Hopefully they go away. And then as they're going down the page, we're building trust and credibility. And then we have a contact form and a meeting scheduler. Now, some of these can be moved up. And so we have these items up at the top, and you can kind of structure these in a 2-column format where you've got an opportunity to convert way up high. Statistically, if you have your conversion points up higher on the page, you're going to see a higher conversion rate. Sometimes that's not always the goal. Sometimes it's just a better conversion rate. So you'll want to test lots of different variations of this page. Now, there's also something else that we want to include, which is, let's say somebody comes to this page, they see they're in the right spot, they're looking at everything, but they're like, I'm not quite ready to talk to somebody in sales. We're going to use what's called an exit intent pop-up. And so, hey, they weren't ready for the on-ramp to sales. Hey, I'm not ready to talk to somebody yet. But then as they move their cursor up to the top of the page, they go to close it out, we can pop up with a lead magnet. So I can say, hey, before you go, download our cost guide. It'll give you some helpful ranges for projects like yours. Then they can still fill out a form and get access to that. And so these are your on-ramps, and this is going to be your lead magnet. And so we still have those 2 doors, even though our primary goal with paid ads is, hey, we're trying to book some meetings here, move people into the sales process. But again, we paid for these clicks. So if somebody is going to leave, we want to have this as a last-ditch effort to capture the email address. Because again, anything that we're doing here to drive traffic is costing us money. So you might have a budget over here of, $3,000 a month or something like that. And maybe over here you have a budget of, $2,000 a month. And you're driving all of this over here. And if you can convert a lot of this traffic into an email, whether that's through an actual sales opportunity or through someone that's researching that may be a future buyer, then suddenly we start stacking up our email list. And you could add, 10, 100, over time, you'll add even more. And that becomes part of your owned traffic that you can drive. Because now somebody comes to this page, they don't book a meeting, they download your cost guide. Now you can send them emails and you can nurture them over time. And eventually, 3, 4, 5 months from now, they'll book a meeting with you and they will take an on-ramp. If we don't have this, we lose that opportunity. And so we want to still have those 2 doors. And that's a way that we can, over a longer time horizon, we can lower our cost per lead and lower our cost to acquire a customer. Because if we only go for the people that are ready to buy now, we're missing about 96% of the market, which is actively researching and they're going to be future buyers. So to quickly recap, we got 2 main channels, Google and Meta. The big difference is intent. Here, somebody is looking for a solution. Again, depending on the keyword that you're targeting, but we only want to target those keywords that have high buying intent. Over here, we're stopping the scroll. We're interrupting someone, and so it requires different creative. Over here, we just want to match the intent and the creative and get them to the page where we can convert them. And over here, we're trying to find those right people that are researching and see if we can encourage them to enter the sales process, or at the very least, as they hit this page and then exit, go on to our email list. And again, the ultimate goal of this is to produce meetings for sales and build our email list. So a couple of key points as we wrap the video, some things to keep in mind. This overall rented traffic is going to be faster than SEO, right? Writing content, getting it to rank takes a lot of time. This, you can turn on a campaign and set the budget, and the platforms, these platforms, they're happy to start spending your budget right away. So it is typically faster. However, it's usually more expensive than SEO. And the reason is, over time, SEO in your digital landscape tends to compound because you're not paying for every single click. So you could write some content and then that will rank. And then you're getting traffic from that ranked content. Then you write some more content and then it will rank. And now you're getting this traffic, but you're also getting this traffic, and you're not paying for all of that every time. You're just paying to create and publish this content and get it ranked. And as you continue to do that, you just get more and more traffic, but you're not paying for every single click. Here, every click is paid for, and if you turn it off, you don't get any more traffic. And so that's why over the long haul, this is typically a more expensive channel. It doesn't mean it's a bad channel. It doesn't mean it's not a profitable channel. It's just typically more expensive. And the key here is that we want to feed our owned traffic with this, which is this right here. We want to make sure we're building that email list. So there you have it. That is a more in-depth look at rented traffic, which is this second ring in the marketing bullseye. And in the next video, we're going to go ahead and talk about that third ring to wrap up. What are all the different ways and the methods that we can use to pull traffic and pull those right fit clients into our website, which is at the center, into our company, and get them into the sales process. All right, we'll see you in the next video.